Hey there, this is kind of a review for my students, but if you're not one of my students, it might be new to you. This is the introduction to the What the Animal project, where you're going to take 4 or more animals and try to create a new creature out of them. So I have decided that I'm going to take this bird, this red bird, and I'm going to turn it into something different. So for the purposes of this assignment, for this walkthrough, we're going to do something similar to this as our final result. Isn't that a nice looking animal? This consists of an elephant ear, an elephant trunk, a field mouse's eye, and then on the belly it's actually part of a turtle shell that's blended in there. So and then of course the bird is my animal. So I'm going to walk you through how to create something like this. I actually went steps farther and did this a little differently. I ended up using the ear and kind of going a stegosaurus route, getting rid of the rear. We won't get that in depth, but when you do the project, if you're in my class, you must interact with your animal. So there's me interacting with my animal, who in the end I felt kind of looked like Sebulba from the Star Wars movies. But anyhow, I changed the color. I added these field mouse ears along the back. Anyway, I'm going to show you how to blend these things in and kind of create that sort of thing. But this is what an example finished product might look like. I replaced my background. I added my words, my initials as indicated in the instructions. So anyway, that's what my finished one looks like, and here's what we're starting with. So if you want the files for this, you can download them. They're in the Blend Me folder, in the Project Images folder if you're in my Photoshop class, in your Photoshop folder, on the shared drive, and if not, you can get the Blend Me folder as a zip file. So here we go. The first thing you're going to do is you need to remove your object from the background. Now you can choose a completely different background like I did here. I ended up replacing the background completely, but one of the very first steps you need to do if you're using an image straight off the internet as your source image is you need to make sure it's going to fit when you print it. If it's a little too big, that's not a big deal. But if when you go here, it looks like this, that's way too small. Or this, and you can't just up it because it's going to get blurry, okay? Don't go above 100. So, you know, this one here is about as good as it gets as far as it's big enough to be right. So if it's smaller than this, that picture's not going to work. You need to do some Googling for bigger images than that. But mine is fine at about 100%. It's got a decent margin around the edges, but you can see plenty. I will warn you that since we're not starting from new documents with 150 pixels per inch like we normally do, that most of your web images are going to be at 72 pixels per inch, meaning these won't look as great printed out as they look on the screen. So I just want you to be aware. Alright, so we're going to start off and we're going to pull the bird off the background. And if you knew you weren't going to use the feet or whatever, and I guess for this example I'll do that, then just don't bring those in. And you can get rid of the stick and everything if you wanted to. But at a minimum, we're going to pull the bird off the background. So I'm going to use my quick selection tool on plus and select the bird. And again, I'm going to get rid of the feet this time, so I'm just going to let them go. And so there we go. You may need to switch to other selection tools if whatever you're using to begin with isn't giving you a great selection. Then you're going to refine edge. With refine edge, we do want to use the refine edge brush, this, to go around any edges where we know there's hairs. So if you know, which there's not really any there, now that's going to make it a little bit see-through. You can kind of tell that on the edges. So I'm going to go back around and fix that so I don't lose some of the other. But anyway, use that around the edges so you don't lose your little bitty hair parts, like there. There's some hairy parts. And if there's areas you don't need, again, switch to that to get rid of whatever you changed that didn't work out so well. Okay? But that looks pretty good. You're going to test it on black and white and make sure it looks okay. And then here's the kicker on this one. We want to send this out as a new layer with a layer mask. That way it's its own deal. Okay? So new layer with layer mask. So I'm going to do that and say okay, and now it's by itself. So now I could very easily replace the background. It's still there if I want to use it, but I could replace the background. So do it that way. If you want to replace your background, you can drag in a new background, or you can turn off that one and then you need to get rid of the bird on this layer because you may get rid of pieces and you need to, you know, have that background patched. So now you're going to patch your background. You want to do that on a new layer. And so I'm going to just put that here. And again, I have to hurry because I have to finish these in like 15 minutes, so I don't have tons of time. And of course, it doesn't want to move, but I'll fix it in a second. So clone stamp is probably the easiest way to start this. I'm going to tell it to use the current and below, which means it's going to sample any of the layers. I'm going to make sure I have a soft brush, so my hardness is turned down, and be sure this is on normal and opacity is at 100. You hold down Alt to find an area of good, I was going to say sky, but that's green, and then you just paint with it. Now, the colors don't match well because this is the clone stamp. And clone stamp doesn't really blend other than those edges. So, you kind of have to just get the main stuff out of there, and then you're going to go back and fix some of this. So again, if I decided I wasn't going to use this twig at the bottom, I'll just do that here while I'm down here, then I could go through and start removing that. And then anywhere where you're getting weird seams, you'll have to fix later on. Okay, and it's running into the edges over here, so that's what's happening, in case you're wondering. Alright, so let's say I've got all that out of there. I'm going to zoom out, and then it's a little bit speckly, so I could come in here now with my healing brush, which works in a similar way. Turn the hardness down, and then again, set to current and below, mode to normal, and now I can kind of go in, and it'll try to blend those a little bit better, so it's not so weird looking. But honestly, it was kind of a muddled background anyway, so it's probably not really hurting anything to have that kind of look going on there. At least it's sort of consistent now, right? So that works. Good enough. Okay, so there we go. That takes care of that, and I can put that in front of my current background layer. I'll call it Fix It because I just fixed my background. Now if I turn this on, here I've got my little bird floating around. Or like I said, you can replace the background altogether. Alright, let's start dealing with doing our modifications to turn this into a crazy looking animal. So I'm going to open some images. We have an elephant, a field mouse, and a spotted turtle that we're going to use pieces of. So I'm going to start off with the elephant. Actually, no, I'm not going to start off the elephant. Let's start off with the field mouse. I really should decide ahead of time, shouldn't I? Alright, so I'm going to come in here, and one of the first things that's easy to do is we're going to actually replace the eyeball. So I'm going to take my quick selection tool on plus and just select the eyeball as best I can. There we go. Doesn't have to be perfect, it's just an eyeball. So you can refine edge if you want to check it out, but obviously there's not a whole lot going on. It's just an eyeball. So I'm going to undock the field mouse, go back to my bird image, and then drag it over. So take my eyeball and drag it over here. Now, if you don't see it, like I don't see it right now, then it's probably hidden, and see it is. It's behind that layer. So I'm going to lift this up, or lift this down, one or the other, and there we go. So this is the mouse eye. Now I've got to get rid of the bird's eye, so I'm going to make a layer on top of this one to remove the eye. And so again, going to take your clone stamp or healing brush or something to try to fix that. So I'm going to try clone stamp first. And so you're going to pick an area that looks kind of like that. So like the area right next to it's probably a good go. So I'm going to hold down Alt and click. And just kind of come in here, click around a few times. There we go. That looks good. Alright, so now I've removed the eye. Now let's go up to the mouse eye and take our move tool and position it. And it's kind of, it was facing the other direction, so we'll Control T to get our transform handles and right click, and we'll flip it horizontally. That's mirroring it. And then check mark. See, that's better. And you decide where you want that eyeball to go, because it's your creation, right? So it can look however we want it to. Now the next step is I'm going to change this whole bird to be a blue color. So, you know, if you want to do that, you're going to add a either a hue saturation or a color balance. Both of these work well. If you're dealing with things that have a lot of blacks, grays, or whites, you want to go with color balance for sure. I'm going to use hue saturation this first time. Now, don't pay attention to the background because it's going to get all messed up. Just pay attention to your bird as you go through these. Alright, and find the shade of blue you like. You're going to lighten it up some so it's not, you know, whatever. You could do that, or if it's too blue, pull some of the saturation back so it's not so blue. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to clip these layers into this adjustment so it kind of eats them up. So I'm going to hold down my Alt key, and I'm going to take my mouse eye and I'm going to clip it in. Okay, and then I'm going to repeat that process here. I want all of these clipped in here, so I'm going to keep clipping them in. Oops. Okay. so that they're all clipped in. I lost the top one. There we go. So that they're all clipped in to the bird. So the bird and everything else in here is going to get blue. Okay? And they're all following that same one. Now you can't go add all the other pieces and then do the blue on the top, because things that are red turn a different color when you start to add these balances and these hues. So you kind of have to do it in steps. So far, here's what we've got. Now we're going to go and grab part of the elephant. So I'm going to grab the elephant ear in this case. So I'm going to come in here and select the ear. I don't need the forehead, so I'm just going to get some of that out of there. Alright, again, I'm not going to take the time and refine edge, but if you were doing it in class, I would strongly suggest that you do that. Okay, so I'm going to minimize that elephant. So here's my elephant ear. So I'm going to Control T, rotate that ear around, and you could decide how to position it. I guess you could make it a hump like a camel or whatever. I'm going to position it there, but I'm going to move it so it's behind my bird. Okay, call that ear. And then again, you can add that color change. So this time, because it's got grays, I'm going to use color balance. So on my ear, I got right above it, I've got color balance. I'm going to go to the cyan area. Again, don't worry about the background. And I'm going to go towards the blue until I feel like I'm getting those colors kind of matched up. Okay. Alright, that looks pretty decent. Alright, so then we clip it in. So we do a clipping mask by holding down Alt and clicking it in there. And there we go. We've got that in there. Or you could make it, you know, up here at the front or just whatever you wanted. Alright, so that takes care of that one. Now we're going to continue on. I'm going to bring the elephant back up because I minimized it so I can't get to it. And we're going to Control D to get rid of that selection. And we're going to pop in here and get the trunk. The trunk's a little more complicated, and again, for the sake of time, I don't have tons of time to try to fix this. But I am going to switch to the polygon lasso on plus and add some of these sections in. It's a little bit easier to do with the lasso. There, I'll double click and get that in there. I still have another chunk missing, so I'll try to add that in too. So again, this isn't the best selection in the world, guys, and you would want to refine edge, but for the sake of recording time, I can't do that right now. Alright, so I've got that in there, and my trunk's hidden and stuck in a clipping mask, so I'm going to pull it up here in front of the, there we go, at the top, and it's not in the clipping mask anymore, so I'm good. I'm going to Control T and rotate this around a bit, but you're going to notice a big problem, which is the beak's in the way. So I've got to go in and fix this beak business, and I also didn't do a very good job on this trunk, but so I'm going to have to go onto the layer where my bird is. I'm just going to get rid of some of that beak. So I'm going to click on the mask and paint with a black brush. I'm going to size down, and that's just essentially it. Works like an eraser. Now if you do need to fix any of this, you may have to make a layer and then patch or clone stamp or something a little bit. So I could do that as well on some sort of layer here to try to fix that so I have a little bit more going on. Oops, I got kind of a, there we go. Alright. Fix beak. Alright, so now I've got my trunk up there at the top. Okay, got it in there. Let's turn it back on, and then we rotate it around. If you need it to blend better, you can add a mask to the trunk and paint with a black paintbrush. And I used to make it a really big paintbrush so I can just use the edge of it to kind of give it a blend. See that? Alright, now I'm going to add the color balance adjustment. I'm going to go ahead and clip this one in. I'm going to hold down Alt and click it in, and then I'm going to go ahead and adjust that trunk. I guess that's the new beak or whatever. Alright, so that's that. The last thing I added on this one is the turtle, and again, I'm fighting time here. All I did was take part of the turtle, not the whole thing, just part of it. You can just polygon lasso it out to give you a chunk of the turtle. I pulled it over, and I overlaid it over the belly. So basically, I Control T'd it down, I put it over part of the belly, and then I used a warp transformation, the warp transformation, to make it look more like it's not just sitting there. So when you're on transform and you go to warp, you can grab a hold of parts of this and see how it makes it more like it follows the curvature better. Okay, and then I added a blend mode to this layer. And that blend mode makes it look different. And as I said in class, we tend to use screen, overlay, or multiply. Multiply makes it darker, screen makes it lighter, and then overlay, which is what I usually use, kind of makes it blend in. You can make changes still to your shell by adding a layer mask if there's areas that you don't need or you want them to blend better. You can kind of blend the edges a little bit like so, but that gives it that different look. So there you go. There's our What the Animal introduction for Photoshop.